Hi guys, this is Tuesday's video. Again, there's only one video for the next 2 weeks at least. So you should have your writing response 6 already turned in. Writing response 7 is due tomorrow. Again, the topics are already on the syllabus, but also they are in the exploratory writing folder. So here we have writing response 6. It's not open yet, but you will have already responded to it. I'm doing the videos a little bit before things are due. Anyway, 6 and 7 will be under the exploratory. Writing response 8 is just like the discussion group. It's another peer review. So 1 to 2 pages of your research paper to peer review. And then writing response 9 is, again, a response to your group stakeholder drafts. So that's just a heads up for what's coming. For today, though, we're going to look at the 2 stakeholder documents that I had you read, and we're going to talk about research questions and how basically to decide on an issue. So let's go ahead and go to these 2 documents, and also the 2 papers that I've put up already are spot-on sample papers. If you've already read one, you might take time to read the other one if you're still struggling with what this paper is about. So again, I think the best way to understand the paper is to just see an example of it. So for stakeholders, we're going to talk in this video what is a stakeholder, how it relates or is important in your paper, and also how to go about choosing your topic and forming your research question. So as you have already read this document, you know that there are 3 types of stakeholders. The differences between the types of stakeholders doesn't matter for the sake of this paper. This document is provided by the English department, and it's just to give you a little bit more specific vocabulary with the 3 types. So basically, all 3 of these are saying people who are affected. Either more affected would be the primary, secondary would be people that are kind of second-hand affected by a change to an issue. So the example they give here for primary stakeholder would be if, say, your landlord changes, or like the government, a state government changes a rent control policy. So it might benefit or harm tenants, or benefit or harm landlords. So the tenants and the landlords would be mostly the 2 sides there. Again, when you're getting ready to choose your issue or your topic, think about what matters to you, what you want to argue that is not a tired topic, because you have to have a personal stake in this matter. So it can be like your dad was affected by something, or you personally were affected by something. If I were doing this paper, I would write about graduate student funding, because that's something that I'm really passionate about. It affects me every single day, and there's a lot to say with that issue, and there are multiple sides. There are multiple stakeholders, okay? So think about, again, what matters to you and what you want to actually argue or say in your paper. It's good to enter the paper with a research question rather than having an answer already. So you want to enter the field with a topic, but not an answer or a specific, like, strict view on that topic. Because when you get into the research field, you might find out, oh, here's some information I didn't know, and that might change my view a little bit, okay? Most people don't completely reverse their view. I've had it in the past where students do reverse their view, and that's really interesting, and they produce often better papers because it shows that they have invested the time and really dug into the research. So that's primary stakeholders. Secondary stakeholders, these are often hard to see in an issue. The example that's given here is a program used to reduce domestic violence, for example, could have a positive effect on emergency room personnel by reducing the number of cases they see. So here is something, the primary stakeholders would obviously be the victims of domestic violence, the people who commit domestic violence, and also the policy itself, or the policy makers. Could be 3 separate stakeholders. The secondary would be people who are affected, like emergency room workers who have to help the victims, okay? Key stakeholders are very similar to primary stakeholders. They might not belong to these 2 groups, but they might be more engaged in the institution or the issue or whatever you are choosing. So the key stakeholders are normally those two sides. Remember in the first video I said there's normally a pro and con. These key stakeholders, if they're not already the primary stakeholders, then they're going to fit into this category. Again, if this all confuses you, just think about if the group, organization, person, etc., if they care about this issue enough to enact change or to speak up about it, then that means they are a stakeholder in an issue. So think about like if a tuition costs rose. Obviously, the school would be, as an institution, would be a huge factor. Who does the school employ? Who's getting that money? And also who's paying that money? So the students are paying the money, right? But who's getting the money? So all of these are going to be stakeholders. All right, let's move on to the second document. And the second document, I think, might actually help you more with your topic or your issue. So it lists up here that stakeholders are generally said to have an interest in an effort or organization based on whether they can affect or be affected by it. The more that they are affected by it, the stronger their interest will be. So again, think about like Wall Street. Who is affected by that? I don't really care too much about Wall Street, but I'm sure it does have some trickle down to, I would probably be a secondary or like a tertiary stakeholder. So again, what issue matters to you? What do you have to say about an issue? Okay, so there are several categories here, and you might look at one category and say, hey, that's actually interesting to me, and I have something to say about that, or I have struggled with this in the past. So economics. This here includes zoning regulations, it includes pay schedules, anything dealing with economy or money. If you are low income, you guys are students, but maybe your family's low income. The programs that exist in the world, welfare, Medicaid, etc. If you have some relationship with them, or if you have or your family has and you want to talk about it, this paper would be a good place to do that. As long as you have something to fill in that personal stakes section in your paper. Again, you have to write like a story about why this is important to you, like both of the sample papers have. Then you can go ahead and try to tackle this issue. All right, social change. This might include something like, this often deals with race, ethnicities, and different majorities. So this might include something to do with political agendas, but not like the political members themselves. I had 3 Donald Trump papers last semester, and they were not super successful because basically they were just arguing he shouldn't be in office, and that's not enough of an argument for this paper. They had 3 separate sections and a personal stake as one of the 3 sections, but try to think about something more local, something you can do more research with, something in West Virginia or wherever you're from. All right, that would be a social change. Work. Okay, so this would be if you have a job. I know many of you work off campus. You have 2 to 3 jobs. So is there a policy or anything with your job, with your parents' job, that you want to change? That would be a good place to start as well if you're passionate about it. Do you get paid enough? The $15 an hour minimum wage. You could start talking about that, but also tie it to your local situation. All right, time. This might be parental leave and caregiver leave, etc. So like, I know maternity leave's a really hot button issue. Also, just kind of adjacent to that, like breastfeeding in public is really, people are talking about that a lot right now, and that doesn't really relate to time, but it is an issue. Again, if you're affected by it or not, you have to judge that. I don't know your lives. All right, the environment. So this, make sure you don't just say, okay, all of climate change or all of fracking or all of oil spills. All right, if you want to talk about the environment, then get specific. Someone wrote a paper about the Mon River 2 semesters ago, like the condition of the Mon River. He was really surprised that it was so run down and polluted. So he actually interviewed some people, and he looked up some research on that and looked at environmentalist groups around Morgantown, because he was really passionate about the environment, specifically river water and contamination. All right, physical health. A lot of you are playing sports, or you're interested in a more physical activity or issue. So what there could you write about? Could you write about the sport? Could you write about the team? That would be fine, but again, there must be an issue or a topic or a problem. There must be sides and people who are invested in this problem. And then your stake in the claim has to be a real thing as well. Safety and security, this is like neighborhood watch. You know how you get the WVU text alerts. Is that a good system? Is there anything that you would improve with that system? That's another thing as well. If you see a problem, then your paper can be a solution to that problem, as long as there are multiple stakeholders invested in this issue. All right, and the last one is mental health, or any kind of like anything beyond this scope of this physical health. So mental health, the Caruth Center, do you have any specific issues with the Caruth Center? Do you think it's a really great means of mental health facility? Just think again about what you're invested in, and don't worry about my opinion, because I'm not invested in like your side that you're going to take. I'm looking at your writing. So don't worry about, oh, she's not going to like this paper. Okay. Think about the writing, the organization, the structure. That's what I'm here for. So hopefully one of these categories, or another one that you've already thought of. Academics, I would probably add to this list. In your program even, one girl wrote a paper about the physical therapy program and how it only takes a certain number of applicants per year, and it's really competitive. Oh no, it's occupational therapy, the occupational therapy program. And if you don't get in, then you're kind of screwed with your major. So she identified an issue with the application process and did some research on it of other schools. Also, like out-of-state, in-state tuition costs. One girl lived only an hour away. She lived in Pennsylvania, and she had to pay out-of-state tuition, whereas someone 4 hours south is still qualified for in-state tuition. So she proposed a system that said it should be based on the radius of your like how far you were away from the school, like 100 miles or something. And then she looked at the pros and cons of something like that. So I've listed off several topics that other people have encountered in the past. And how you form a research question is you have your topic, and essentially you ask whatever you want to learn about this topic. So let's take the tuition, out-of-state, in-state tuition issue. So that would be her topic, and then her research question would be, how would the funding or the school system change if instead of having an out-of-state, in-state tuition border, we had a radial distance of 100 miles? So that would be her research question, okay? Or like the sample paper 2, which is kind of ironic, I realized after I put it on there, because this is an online class, and he's arguing for a human teacher in the classroom. But he said basically he looked at technology in the classroom was his issue, and his research question would be how is a student's learning affected by a physical human teacher versus a technological like a Skype teacher, or even just like an iPad classroom where you don't have a physical human teacher in the classroom. How is the education, or how does the student's learning process change? Okay, so start thinking of your topic. Writing response 7, my feedback to that will really help. Again, keep doing the free writes. I do respond to those every day, and my responses should help. And yeah, we're getting to the thick of it, and class is going to end soon, so do your best. All right, guys.